Good morning and a very warm welcome to Ad Net Zero. Although perhaps I shouldn't use the word warm because we're going to talk about climate change and global warming. So maybe a very heartfelt welcome to Ad Net Zero. Now, the climate challenge is by far the biggest challenge that faces us, and it dwarfs COVID as an issue for the globe. And what we need to do now in the ad industry to change the long-term impact is critical. It's critical for our industry, but of course it's critical for the planet too. And the scale of this challenge means that this is the most important report that the Advertising Association and Credos, the industry think tank, has ever done. So first of all, I'd like to start off with some thank yous. Thank you to the individuals and the companies who have helped us get this far. A special thank you to Seb Munden from Unilever, who chaired the steering group, and indeed James Best from Credos, who chaired the action group. I'd also like to add a thank you to King Henry and Adam and Eve DDB, who worked on the brand. Now, the ambition of Ad Net Zero is clear. The ambition is to ensure that the climate impact of our industry gets to real net zero. And we want to do that by 2030, in short 10 years. And we have a clear series of actions to get us there. But to achieve this, we need everyone, and literally everyone in the industry, individuals and companies, to join this action, to listen to what these recommendations are. And we need your active support to make it happen. Because if all of us follow this, we will achieve our objectives. But if we don't, we will be a disparate and fragmented effort. And we all need to do this not just for our industry, but for future generations, to ensure that we leave behind the industry in a better place. And it is very much a case of all for none. All of us for Ad Net Zero. Now, by supporting this journey, we're supporting putting the idea of climate action at the heart of our industry. And if you think about the challenges we have around trust, people would expect us to take responsibility, indeed accountability, for the impact of our industry. And by doing this, we will help moving forward on our journey of building trust in the advertising industry. So I'd ask all of us, if not now, when? And if not us, who is going to lead this necessary action for the industry? And if you want to become a supporter, and indeed I hope you will, go onto the website and you can see the actions needed to achieve this. Now, this morning we're going to start off by hearing from Credos, and then we're going to be hearing from Sky and Unilever and WPP. And then following that, we're going to have a live Q&A where we're going to have the CEO of the Advertising Association, Steve Woodford, and the chair of the Climate Action Group from Credos, James Best, who are going to engage with you on a live Q&A. So, to start the morning, I'm going to hand over to James Best and to Heather Young, both from Credos, who are going to talk about the report and indeed the action plan.
Good morning. My name is Heather Young and I'm the Project Director at Credos, the UK advertising industry's think tank. At the end of 2019, the Advertising Association's Climate Action Working Group tasked Credos with undertaking research to understand the current carbon impact of UK advertising, the steps already being taken to reduce this by some businesses, and what more the industry needs to do in order to protect our planet for generations to come. Our research has found that the climate emergency is an important issue for people working in our industry, and that whilst in many instances efforts have been made by organisations to take climate action, there is still much more to be done if our industry is to make a real impact on the outcome for our world. As a starting point, we wanted to understand, as best we could, the carbon footprint of our industry. Data are relatively hard to come by, which is itself testament to the need for a climate action plan for our industry. So we decided to focus on the core of advertising business, by exploring the operational carbon footprint of advertising agencies. By this, we mean the emissions caused by running offices and business travel. Working with environmental consultancy Green Element, we analysed 3 years' worth of data from 167 agencies. We then combined this with IPA census data to get an estimate of the operational carbon footprint for UK advertising agencies. Our estimate suggests that over 84,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions are generated each year by agency offices and people, averaging out at around 3.4 tonnes per agency employee annually. If we are to assume that operational emissions, that is from offices and business travel, are relatively similar for people working in other parts of our industry, this means the combined annual emissions of people working in advertising could be more than 1 million tonnes. The vast majority of an agency's emissions typically come from business travel, around 60% of the carbon footprint, with this being primarily driven by business flights. For some of the specific agencies in our sample, travel emissions accounted for over 3/4 of their overall operational footprint. In many instances, these emissions are concentrated in the travel of a small selection of people. In fact, one return transatlantic business trip generates more carbon than the average agency employee does in a year. The remaining 40% of emissions come from energy use. Despite its historically high profile and other negative environmental impacts, waste accounts for less than 1% of the carbon footprint of agencies. We also wanted to understand the views of people working in the industry about the climate emergency and advertising's role within this. Through an online survey and qualitative interviews, we have found that the climate emergency is on our minds. In fact, 71% are worried about the negative impacts of our industry on the environment. Our qualitative research shows that the state of our climate is a highly emotional topic and one that causes concern both personally and professionally. It seems that a company's climate credentials has the capacity to influence retention of talent, with 45% saying they have questioned working in the industry due to its environmental impact, and 91% agreeing that knowing their organisation was taking climate action would improve their job satisfaction. From speaking to those in the industry, it seems that the setting up of empowered internal groups to champion climate action initiatives, combined with the visible support of business leaders, is the best way to demonstrate to employees that an organisation is serious about climate commitments and to engage them with the climate action efforts. Finally, we collated examples from organisations and groups taking action to tackle carbon emissions at a company or industry level. These have been pulled together in the report as case studies to provide inspiration and resources to offer practical tools, advice and information about the initiatives that can help organisations on their climate action journey. We had case studies and contributions from over 20 businesses and organisations across the industry, detailing many different types of climate action, from improving the efficiency of office spaces and pursuing carbon certifications and standards, through to auditing creative outputs to ensure they are supporting sustainability messages. And whilst many businesses are taking positive steps such as these, there is more to do, and a concerted effort by the industry is needed to drive real change. I will now hand over to James Best, who chaired the Climate Action Working Group, who will talk through the conclusion the group came to and the 5 actions we are urging the industry to take in our report. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. I'm going to do just that. Hello, everyone. So, on the basis of all that good work by Credos and others, our working group, which I should say was pan-industry with client, media owner, creative agency, media agency and production company representatives, concluded that given the nature of the advertising business, which, unlike some industries, doesn't need reinvention to curb its emissions, and what's already been achieved by many companies, and what's in train right now around the industry, then with commitment from all parties in the ecosystem, we should be able to drive down the carbon emissions of developing, producing and running UK advertising to real net zero by the end of 2030. That's quite a bold ambition, but it's a necessary one. Time is running away from us. And although you can do a lot in 10 years, just think what you've changed in 9 months of COVID, we have to get cracking. And to achieve that net zero goal, and look beyond it, we've come up with 5 action areas. There's nothing terribly complicated, all of it eminently practical, with commitment, cooperation and mutual challenge and encouragement across the industry, because we are all in this together. First, the need for every business to get its own house in order, committing to its own plan of action, which means measuring your carbon footprint, determining priorities, which in most cases, as you've seen, will mean cutting back on travel in particular, the biggest generator of CO2 for the agency sector, at least until this strange year, plus switching to green energy and curbing waste of all sorts. All the things that simply have to be got on with, whatever sort of company you are. As Heather showed, we have plenty of examples to follow from those who've embarked on that course, plus advice and guidance on how best to do it. It needs public commitment and communication, proper measurement, sustained action and reporting, step by step with annual reduction targets. Second, cut emissions from advertising production, film, video and stills by building a carbon calculator into your production planning and assessment and using it to make better decisions. Several options exist, and one, created in partnership with the UK broadcaster's existing set of tools and training, Albert, and backed by a consortium of sponsors from our industry, is Add Green, which we think could really help here, both to measure and reduce carbon, and for that matter, costs. The key here is to do it early in the process. It's got to be part of deciding what creative approach to adopt. By the time you're on the shoot, it's too late. Third, work to reduce emissions from media choice. Here, the IPA Media Futures Group have endorsed and will develop and back a climate charter produced by the working group's media agencies subgroup. This too involves a carbon calculator, thanks to Mediacom, and with other data sources it will bring the question of carbon emissions into media planning discussions between clients, agencies and media owners, many of whom are making great strides on this issue, as we saw just last week with the launch of the Media Climate Pact by some of our biggest media companies. Again, the drive is to put the issue front of mind, commit to measuring, and you'll find that to measure is to reduce. Those 3 actions cover the core activities and processes of advertising, the areas where we believe the industry can achieve the real net zero goal. The other 2 broaden the scope of our collective ambition. The 4th is to urge organisers of events and awards to do 2 things. 1, build sustainability criteria into their judging of what makes good work. Eco-effectiveness, for instance. It's a new idea and measurement tool presented at last month's IPA Effectiveness Week, enabling not only the success of a campaign to be shown, but its carbon impact, and thus how carbon efficient the investment in advertising has been. Smart stuff. And 2, make their events as low carbon as possible. Facilitate more virtual attendance, just like this year. Use locations that minimise the necessity to fly and cut waste. There's a great case in the report from Essential who run Cannes, for instance. And of course, it's not just the organisers who should be thinking about these things, but everyone who attends, virtually or in person. 5th, and finally, to harness advertising's power, its influence on people's purchasing and behaviour, to prompt more sustainable choices and lifestyles. It's a very special power, and one that brings with it a special responsibility. This, of course, is well outside our real net zero goal for the industry's immediate activities, but it is the big challenge. Pressure is building for increased regulation, sometimes punishing regulation, as the outside world pushes our industry, like others, to take greater responsibility. We need to work towards measuring advertising's full impact, including that of our creative work. And we need to work to make advertising a positive influence whenever we can, one that builds an optimistic public mood around more climate-friendly lifestyles, that enhances the incentive to change behaviour. And that means everyone involved in planning and creating advertising thinking about sustainability and carbon in their strategies, their briefs, and proposed solutions. And a great tool described in the report to help that happen is Change the Brief. Do have a good look at it. Advertising's positive influence is also what we can offer government in the run-up to, and for that matter, at COP26 next November, when the eyes of the world will be on us here, or at least on Glasgow, where COP will be. For one thing, advertising can support and amplify the big themes of the conference. For another, it can showcase our progress internationally. By adopting our action plan and getting going on it, the UK ad industry can lead the world. And that's where AdNet Zero comes in, the platform and initiative to take all this action forward with all of us in the industry. As I said, we're in this together. With mutual encouragement, challenge, and expectation of each other, we can hit our target. But the low-carbon train is leaving the station, and I'm sure no one wants to get left behind. So do get on board right away. Thanks very much.
Thank you, James and Heather, for that fantastic presentation. Now we're going to hand over to Stephen Woodford, who's the CEO of the Advertising Association, Debbie Klein, who's the Group Chief Marketing, Corporate Affairs and People Officer for Sky, Seb Munden, who is the Executive Vice President and General Manager for Unilever for UK and Ireland, and Mark Reed, who's the CEO of WPP.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the AdNet Zero panel discussion. I am absolutely delighted to have such a distinguished and very, very committed group of business leaders from across the industry here to talk about AdNet Zero and the importance of climate action to their businesses. So without further ado, let me ask them to introduce themselves. So can I turn to you first, please, Debbie?
Hi everyone, I'm Debbie Klein and I've got responsibility for corporate affairs, people and brand marketing at Sky.
Thank you, Debbie. Mark?
Hello, I'm Mark Reed and I'm the Chief Executive of WPP.
And finally, Seb.
Hi, I'm Sebastian Munden, everyone calls me Seb, and I'm the General Manager and Executive Vice President of Unilever, UK and Ireland.
Thank you very much, and thank you again for joining us today. This is such an important subject, and we're really delighted to have your views and to help us get AdNet Zero off to the best possible launch we can. So this is going to be a question to all of you, and I'll go in the same order again of Debbie, Mark and Seb. Now, each of you are leading businesses that are taking very positive climate action. Can you give us a sense of what the mood is like within your companies about this, and how engaged are your people with taking this positive action? And Debbie, if I can go to you first.
Yeah, so we've always had this thinking at Sky that you need to be able to see the bigger picture and that businesses have to be part of the ecosystem. And of course, business is about financial performance and shareholder returns, but we have to give back as much as we take from the environment. So, you know, the way we think about it, 3 million customers and 30,000 staff, we've got to recognize that the bigger we are, the more responsibility we have. So when we think about our place in the wider world, we've over the years taken a position on the environment, but more recently that's become sort of more urgent. And this year we gave a commitment in February to become net carbon zero by 2030, 20 years before we legally have to. And that's across our entire value chain. So massive commitment, you know, our products, our supply chain, and also in customers' homes. So we set about transforming our business and, you know, bringing our millions of customers and suppliers and partners with us to follow a science-based approach. And actually, what's great about it is having a target, because we're such a target-focused company and we love chasing a target, that everyone has really got behind it. And we found in the last sort of 6-7 months, even through COVID, people have become very engaged and very energized by it and thinking, what can I really do to make a difference? So in fact, when it comes to production, our Sky Original productions have actually been carbon neutral since 2019. But you can also we've done incredible things with Sky Sports. So, it was the first carbon neutral transfer day this year because we used all of our Sky Sports and Sky Sports News productions are Albert certified. I think that's about meeting the sustainability credentials and tackling environmental broadcasting. And then we've got things coming up in the future like Sky Studios Elstree, which is our new production facility we're building, which will be open in 2022, which will be the most sustainable TV production facility in the world. So I think people who work here feel really energized by that and the ability to also engage our customer base. So I've never seen more heightened engagement and commitment to make a difference as a business.
Thank you, Debbie. That's an incredibly impressive series of initiatives from Sky. And I think for me, it's become an increasingly important part of the Sky brand, actually, the leadership that you're showing on sustainability. Mark, coming to think about WPP and thinking about, you've got a huge and global organization across many, many businesses. Does this act as a sort of catalyst, do you think, to bring people together about the company's overall mission in terms of sustainability?
Yes, I mean, I think we've been looking at sort of the purpose of WPP, to use the power of creativity, which is what I think we're all about, to build a better future for our people, our clients, and our communities. And clearly, the climate is a big part of that. Like Debbie, we're maybe not as enthusiastic about targets as Debbie is, but culturally, but I think targets are important. And we cut our emissions by 69% per person, over the last 14 years. But we've got a lot further to do, and we're looking at we set some new objectives this year to be zero emission in all of our campuses by 2025, to source all of our electricity from renewable sources. And it's really important to our people. It's brought our people together. Our agency leaders find it important, but most of all, it's important to our clients. And I think we really understand the responsibility we have to help our clients meet their own goals. And that involves not just what we do inside the company, but also the work we do in production and through media, which we can talk about, but also the way that we can use the power of our voice, or the power of our client's voice, to really affect change across the world. And I think that's the most motivating thing to our people. In one way or another, we touch maybe 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 of the world's commercial messages. What I say to people is, imagine if we could use that power to change people's behaviors and their attitudes and the importance of this topic through the type of work that we do. We just did a great piece of work for H&M, AK created a piece of work for H&M in Stockholm, where people can take in their sweater, their jumper, and see it recycled in front of them, into a new one. And we can bring to life what people can do in a really compelling way. And that I think is where we can be really most motivating to our people.
Thank you. And that's just a wonderful thought, I think, about the impact of the output ultimately on global behaviours and sustainability. And of course, as a business, you reach so many businesses across the world, and that influence is going to be incredibly important. I think turning to Seb, and I think when we think about sustainability, I would imagine most people think Unilever, and I know polls and data shows that Unilever are top of the table in terms of the work that you've done over the years. So Unilever has demonstrated real leadership in this. So it's probably been in your organisation almost longer than anybody's. But tell us, Seb, how do people feel now about this within Unilever, and in a sense, the acceleration of the urgency of the need to make changes?
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan started now 10 years ago, and a lot of progress towards achieving those goals. But what became really clear is that the purpose at the heart of our business strategy gave us a step change. And I think it's one of the reasons why people want to come and work with us, and whether that's as an employee or as an agency partner, because we've put sustainable living not just at the sort of heart of our kind of energies around the business, but actually right at the heart of the strategy of the business. And looking forward, I think we're very much looking forward to achieving zero emission in our operations by 2030. We have 2 science-based targets around that. The other one is to halve the footprint of our products along the value chain by 2030. But we also have a target for net zero for our products from sourcing to point of sale by 2039. And I think that's going to be extremely energizing and bring out a lot of creativity if the journey to this point is what, is anything to go by, because these targets do kind of give you that sort of need to leap beyond the incremental and really think through ways of making big changes. And that's what we found in the last 10 years, that pursuit of these audacious targets, however necessary and urgent, brings out the challenge and brings out the best in people. So people do find that highly motivating, whether they're in the science area or in the business area. We all coalesce around a real determination to change our footprint quite radically, and still continue to serve millions of households around the world with those products that just make life that little bit better, but at the same time also will become a more sustainable choice as well.
And I can say from personal experience, working with Unilever, I remember coming to one of your global procurement conferences, which, when you get that invitation, doesn't necessarily set the pulse racing, but actually the whole day was about sustainability. And it was the most inspiring day hearing about all these initiatives, because these are really, really difficult things that you're doing. And I think the leadership that Unilever's shown is actually inspiring for all firms around the world. Because if a business with the complexity of Unilever can do this, everybody can do this. Well, thank you. That's fantastic to hear all of the energy, I think, that's coming from getting behind climate action. I want to turn to some more specifics about each of your businesses. And if I may, I'll turn to Mark first. Now, WPP was one of the very earliest backers of AdGreen, which we've heard about earlier. As you know, that's our program to reduce the carbon footprint of advertising production. One of your media agencies, Mindshare, has developed Change the Brief. And your agencies, along with many others in the IPA's Media Futures Group, are being instrumental in developing the carbon calculator for media planning. So we're seeing real examples of leadership. And Mark, you mentioned before about the ability to really focus on the output. Perhaps tell us a little bit more about Change the Brief and the impact that's having, and also the thinking about the media planning carbon calculator.
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously really pleased to be a founding partner of AdGreen and see the impact that it can have on an advertising production, and it brings home the point that we have to do this together. We have to make this a collaborative enterprise. It's important to our clients, and when you have clients like Unilever take a leadership position, they actually drive other clients to do the same thing. And we're working, directly with 1 in 5 of our top 50 clients on their initiatives to reduce their emissions. But our industry is so influential, isn't it? Our industry spends maybe $600 billion promoting their products and services, all in a way that can change people's behavior. And Change the Brief is intended to sort of get to the heart of that. So if we have a brief for a new product or a new launch, we answer the brief that we get given, like all good agencies, but we also change it. We say, well, actually, how can we turn this, into just something that's just as commercially powerful, but that also promotes a healthy lifestyle, a more carbon neutral lifestyle, or doing something better, to sort of get 2 goals out of the same thing. Similarly, for our media plans, there is a carbon impact of all of our media plans, and I think clients are increasingly to start to say, well, if I spend money on a physical newspaper or a search, what is, or on Sky, what is the carbon impact of that media choice? And so we're helping clients, really think through what the carbon impact is of what they do. And it's important to clients, I think, we see it in their marketing. We did some work with Burger King on the impossible Whopper, the meatless Whopper. But part of the proposition to consumers was, it reduced the carbon impact by 89%. And so it became not just something to do that was healthier and tastier, but also better for the planet. And I think that consumer attitudes are changing really quickly. So it's critical that we and everyone else in the industry get on board with this.
Okay, Debbie, turning to Sky now, not just as a big broadcaster, but as one of the UK's leading advertisers, and along with WPP and Unilever, you were the trio of companies that were the first to back AdGreen, which, as you mentioned, Albert earlier on, the broadcasting sustainability platform that we're building AdGreen on the back of. But just can you talk for a moment about how you see the responsibility of advertisers, and particularly looking at every aspect of their advertising footprint, in a sense, to ensure that that's as sustainable as possible?
Yeah, so I think, like Mark, I think we're delighted to be one of the founder partners, and the reason we backed AdGreen so quickly and we're so enthusiastic is we see it really as a vital platform for sharing best practice and innovative ways to tackle the climate crisis. So I think we feel we've always understood, if we can take a leadership position and we can share that more broadly across the industry. So, for example, when we committed to become single-use plastic free 2 years ago across our operations, our products, and our whole supply chain, which we have achieved, we then created a sort of blueprint that we could share with everyone. And I think that's how we see our role, is, becoming a sort of force for good more broadly across the industry. So absolutely, we want to share our experience of Albert, it's taken us a number of years to get to the point where all of those productions are now net zero. So what can we learn from that, and how can we share that with other clients and other agencies? And, this idea of going zero, it's all about, becoming a force for good more broadly in the industry. And I also think the idea of the calculator, which Mark mentioned, is fantastic, because people want to make informed choices. They want to do business responsibly, but they don't always have the tools to do so. So I think it'd be really powerful for all of us to have the carbon footprinting conversation right at the pitching stage, actually, so that this is a conversation that we have as early on as possible. And I think it's part of just seeing as a large player in the industry, who spends hundreds of millions on advertising, and thinking of it exactly as we do for creating our own broadcast productions. That is how we'll approach it when we think about advertising. And it's our obligation, we think, to sort of lead the way. And particularly this year, next year, in the run up to COP, because, all eyes of the world are going to be on the UK to take a leadership position, and we need to play our part as an industry.
That's absolutely true. And in fact, we're planning to host a global AdNet Zero conference as part of COP26. So think about next November. We want to demonstrate real progress that the UK industry has made in terms of AdNet Zero. And the sort of leadership that the companies here are showing is going to be critically important to that. And we want to hear about what the rest of the world are doing, because this is all about coming together. There's what I love about this is there's an element of competition. There's an element of the commercial success that companies have from sustainability plans, but also, as AdGreen and Albert and AdNet Zero hopefully demonstrate, there's a huge amount of collaboration going on to share best practice, because we are all in it together on this, and we have to move forward together. And in a sense, those competitive and collaborative forces, I think, are a massive driving force here. Seb, if I may turn to you, and I want to ask you to, if you wouldn't mind reflecting on an announcement last week that Rishi Sunak made, that all UK companies are going to be required to clearly report their impact on climate by 2025. And that comes from the recommendations of a global task force. And I think the UK is going to be the first G20 country to mandate such a disclosure. What does this mean for Unilever and its advertising, do you think?
Well, I think the way I always think of it is, by the time you've got to report is the time you need to have done something. So reporting in the end is the end, not the beginning. So I think that's the first thing to kind of bear in mind, that by the time any company wants to report something, they want to have something good to report, which means, that like all companies, we'll all need to get going. I do think that, we mustn't be intimidated by that. On the other hand, you can only start where you are. You can start with the next thing. So for some people, that'll be, is the energy in all my sites renewable? Have I sorted my waste? And for other people, they're way past that, and they're on to, in our case, can we adopt Ad Green worldwide, not just here in the UK, where I have jurisdiction, but can I persuade my global colleagues it's so marvellous that we're going to use it around the world? And it's looking good, by the way. This may be a bold moment, but I think that's the kind of thing we need to be doing. And in the end, for us, we have started a kind of systematic approach many years ago, but everyone can start a systematic approach now. And the great thing about the initiative that we're talking about today is that the 5 actions are quite concrete, really. Action number 1, sort your housekeeping. Action number 4 is a bit more housekeeping, but don't forget to say thank you and reward and award people who've done a great job. Then we have 2 very practical actions with the adoption of Ad Green for production and understanding our carbon footprint in the media space. And last of all, we have changed the brief. And I know most Unilever clients will actively encourage agencies to change the brief and to bring a bigger picture, a bigger thought, point out where we may have missed a beat, and I would encourage everyone to do that. By the way, that's not just about advertising briefs. I think that's about the whole operation. In Unilever UK, we're encouraging people to change the brief on everything. If you see that we've been too sort of short-sighted or not progressive enough.
That's fantastic to hear, and to restate those actions, I just wanted to say thank you, Seb, to you, because you've played an instrumental role in developing that climate action plan, along with James, our other chair, and we are absolutely thrilled with the plan. And I think that point you made about in effect the simplicity and the measurability, and that's absolutely critical. And a key part of Ad Net Zero going forward is to be tracking this, and this is where we want the engagement from across the industry. We want firms to be sharing their data with us and sharing their plans wherever they are on the journey. As you said, Seb, the important thing is to start the journey, because by law we'll have to be reporting it in 2025, which is only, when you think about it, a little bit more than 4 or 5 years' time. So it's coming up very, very fast, and I think that's a very good thing to have that urgency here. Well, thank you all for talking about what's happening in your businesses. I'd like to finish with just perhaps a quick personal reflection from each of you about what you're changing in your own life in terms of your behaviours to reduce the impact of your own living and the way you live and your family's ways of living. Clearly, we've all been through profound change because of COVID, but I just wanted to see what new things, or maybe what old things that you're doing that you think are important on a personal level, because we saw in the research that people in our industry feel this both corporately about what they do for their work, but they also feel it, unlike probably most other issues, they feel it very much personally. So perhaps could you tell us how it's affecting your life? And perhaps Mark, as somebody who probably in normal times travels a fair amount, Mark, tell us a little bit about how it's affecting you.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously the biggest impact, isn't it? I mean, air travel is about half of WPP's direct carbon emissions. So clearly we're going to have a big reduction. I haven't been on a plane since March, and I think very few other people from WPP have been. But actually, I analysed my diary for the 3 months where we were all sort of locked down or most incarcerated, and I spoke to 50% more clients than I did in the same period last year, for half as long, without any of the travel. And so I think, like everything in life, you have to sort of lean into it and look at this as an opportunity. And from my perspective, this has been an opportunity to be fantastically better connected to clients. I apologise, Seb, I haven't called you yet, but it's an opportunity to be fantastically more connected to clients and to take advantage of the technology. We've lived through the greatest period of innovation, the most compressed period of innovation in centuries, really, where things that we never thought were possible. And if I said to people at WPP in March, you're going to go home and work from home over a weekend, when, by the way, it would take us 6 months to move an office, We do everything, and then you're not going to get on a single plane and see a client for the next 8 months. They'd have thought I was mad, and they'd have thought the business would have imploded. But actually, our client satisfaction scores have improved. Our work is being done faster, and we've won more new business this year, 40% more new business this year than we did last year. So it just shows what you can do if you try.
Thank you. And Debbie, think about the way you work and live. How's this changed things for you?
So I think I just try and bring that voice into the room whenever we're having business conversations or decisions to make. So, for example, we have that fantastic fleet of Sky vans, which is really important. Engineers going around helping people. How quickly do we replace that to an electric or hydrogen fleet, which is in our plan to become net zero? But the replacement cycle is something we discuss, and doing it as quickly as we can, trying to make sure people do the right thing and make the right choices. And just, the commitment is always there, but sometimes it can be at odds with the business and commercial outcomes. So sometimes you've got to make difficult decisions, like the recent Q box that we launched, which is 40% more energy efficient. There were some difficult choices to be had. So I just try and bring that into the room, try and make sure that everyone's remembering it all the time. And then I would say, on a personal level, it's actually helped me connect with my children who, massively care about this. I've always cared about it, but I would say through the professional prism. But my children have sort of like grown up with this absolutely, front and center. What are you doing, Mum, to make the world a better place? So, of course, like Mark, I also traveled a huge amount, but not nearly as much as he did. But I, again, haven't traveled. But I've actually bought an electric bike. And so I will often those shorter journeys, because what I found is I've become very lazy in short journeys and just always hopping in my car. So, but I'm never going to be one of those, lycra clad cyclists. So I went out and got an electric bike, and it's absolutely changed how I, go and visit people, pop around, go around with my kids. So, so I've done that. And then actually still continuing with single-use plastic, because a lot of people sort of don't realize how important a healthy ocean is as for carbon capture. And to make sure that addressing the climate emergency is as much about healthy oceans. So making sure that we don't drown our oceans in plastic. So I'm still continuing on that journey, and single-use plastic is not welcome in my home. So I'd say it's been a year of huge transformation for all of us. But yeah, you've got to commit heart and soul. It can't just be, on your laptop and nowhere else.
And Seb, for you, similar views, personally and professionally, what has this meant for you?
Well, I think one of the places to start is that the things we need to do in business are the same things we need to do at home. We have to change the way we heat, the way we cook, the way we collect rubbish. We need to change our vehicles. We probably need to phase those expenses over a manageable time period. So that's the same at home. For me, a couple of things where, for me, business and home completely intersect. Which is having a second bin in the bathroom to collect all those plastic bottles so they can be properly recycled, because no one's going to pick them out of an icky bathroom bin. So we just have a second bin, and have sort of managed to train ourselves to put all of those bottles back in. If they're like our Tresemme and Lynx bottles, they can all go all the way back through the recycling process, despite the fact that they're black. Thanks to some really ingenious work that Unilever scientists have done with their supply partners on that pigment. So that's the first thing. The second thing for me is the food that we cook. We're eating less to near zero meat at home, and we don't miss it at all. When there are so many new products out there, like our vegetarian butcher, what the cluck chicken pieces that aren't chicken. You can make fantastic everything you used to do with chicken with what the cluck. And so it really is an eye-opener. So for me, those are, two of the biggest changes. I like my food, I like cooking, but I don't miss the meat reduction at all.
Well, being one of those people that does go through the bathroom bin and separate everything out, I've learned something. Get a second bin. This is my big takeout from today. I wanted to say that we'll wrap things up, but I just wanted to say thank you to the three of you for a fantastic discussion. If I was excited before about AdNet Zero, I'm stratospherically excited now. The inspiration and the leadership that your businesses are showing, and I think also the energy that I sense from you personally about both what it means for you in business terms, but also in your personal lives as well. And this fantastic intersection between those two things, I think, is what gives me great confidence that AdNet Zero is going to be a great success. And we thank you from an Advertising Association perspective for your support for this and for your engagement with this. And I'm hoping the virtual crowd out there, which I think numbers around about 500 or so, can give you a virtual round of applause. But most importantly, join us in this mission. Sign up for AdNet Zero, compete like hell to become a leader like the firms that are represented here today. So Debbie, Mark, Seb, thank you so much on behalf of us all for a great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen, Debbie, Seb and Mark. That was great. And stay with us, because now we're going to move to the live Q&A. And for that, we're going to have Stephen Woodford from the Advertising Association and James Best from Credos.
Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. In fact, it's not around 500, it's about 650 people are on this call. So absolutely delighted that we've got such cross-industry interest in this. And we have got some great questions coming in. The questions will come up on the screen. I've got a rough idea of what the questions as they come. The way I'm going to handle this is I'm going to take all the easy ones and I'm going to hand the difficult ones to James. So let's get straight into them. And the first question, please. So question from Lindsay Patterson: how are the plans coming along for our advertising industry to support COP26 in Glasgow in November next year? And do these plans have to work with government plans or do we work outside with them? How do we get more impact on home turf? I'll take this question actually, because we are talking to government already about COP26. In fact, we had a call yesterday with somebody in the Cabinet Office. They are very supportive of this and other industry initiatives. We want to show that we are leading the world in the efforts that we're making in the advertising industry. And I mentioned in the panel that we are going to be holding a global conference called AdNet Zero to bring together not just what we're doing here in the UK, but to learn from what is happening all around the world in terms of best practice and make this a real opportunity to learn from each other and to share the best and to encourage each other, because this is absolutely a global mission. And of course, our industry is an incredibly connected global industry, and we heard from 3 global companies in the panel session. So we're actively engaged in COP26 already. We've got ministerial support for the plan that we've announced today. It's actually, we didn't know that today was going to be the day that government announced its 10-point initiative to further develop the green agenda in the economy, but happy timing that came out today, the morning we're launching AdNet Zero. So let's go to the next question. Thank you, Lindsay. A question from Guy Parker. The 10-year net zero goal is ambitious, and rightly so. Is it a moonshot, or is it something that we're confident we can achieve? I'm going to hand that question to James, if I may.
Thanks, Stephen. It's not a moonshot. It's probably a bit more ambitious than Stephen's second bin in his bathroom, but we certainly think it's realistic. And I think, having heard from what the panel have been saying, you can see how big companies are moving fast, and we, if you like, in the agency and advertising world of smaller companies, not only need to move with them, but can do so, because it's not as if the advertising business is kind of stupidly resource heavy or dependent on massive inputs of energy. And we've seen in this past 9 months, as Mark was pointing out, just how big a change can be made pretty swiftly. So frankly, given the nature of the business, given how far quite a lot of companies have already come, given the direction of travel and the accelerating pace of change that I think everybody is facing up to, acknowledging and hearing from and getting pressure from their partners in the business, the ambition, which is, if you remember, real net zero for the development, production and media placement of advertising over 10 years, isn't actually ambitious at all. Frankly, I think the industry should be able to do it quicker.
Thank you very much, James. And just to echo that, I do think it is an eminently achievable goal. But probably the biggest impact we can have, obviously, is in Action 5 in terms of the outputs of the industry and how those change to encourage more sustainable behaviours. And I'm sure we'll be seeing lots of questions in that subject area. So let's go on to the next question, please. A question from Darren Khan. As a small business at the forefront of sustainability for ad production, with our remote sustainable production solution, production trees planting program with Trees for Life, and more recently a sustainable partnership with NPC. But day to day, people have been very reluctant to change. So why has it taken COVID for people to be forced to change? And therefore, as leaders, how are these initiatives going to be implemented and measured at the, and I've just got ... I'm just going to say that probably says at the coal face, I'm going to guess, which is a very good question because we've heard from leaders at the top of businesses in the panel. But actually, this is about the day-to-day behaviours. And so, as that is a particularly difficult question, I'm going to hand that to James, straight back.
It didn't just take COVID. I think things were changing before, but you're quite right that it has often been pushing and shoving to get change. And change isn't always welcome. But again, I'd stress the fact that we are now seeing change happening. We're seeing it happening faster. I think all the way up and down the supply chain, whether it's the people in our own agencies and businesses pressuring management, or whether it's clients and others pulling for better and more sustainable behaviors from their suppliers, we're seeing that action happening. And with Ad Green on the production front, which is one of the options available and one backed by a consortium, as you know, in our own industry, the tools, the resources, the help, the advice, the carbon calculator that people need in order to help themselves in production terms to drive down carbon emissions are increasingly available and accessible.
Thank you, James. And I would add to that and reflect back on something that Debbie was saying about Sky. About the attention to detail all the way through the supply chain, and Seb was saying the same things about the packaging. This is all about attention to detail, and it's about every step of the way. And our business, think about the advertising, production, and media, and all of the ecosystem around our industry, is pretty simple. We don't have the complexities of necessarily removing a black dye from a plastic bottle to make it sustainable. So it is more straightforward, and I think the practical measures that we can take are ones that we already see quite a lot of businesses taking, but we want to see this in a sense as an acceleration of that process, and for it to really translate to the coalface. I think you'll see in the report one of the recommendations that we're making is if in a business that there isn't some sort of green team in the business, where a group which is a sort of group of employees who get together and act as a sort of stimulus and challenging group to the management to make sure that the business actually really does meet up to its expectations and pushes itself. We're recommending set one up because we can see the businesses that do have that sort of active employee group do more and do more quickly. So these things are all absolutely in our power to do. And if you're an employee and you're feeling your management is not making enough moves, point them to Ad Net Zero and challenge them, because I don't think there's a single management team in the country, in any business, let alone our business, that isn't aware of the need to change. And we're seeing this incredible acceleration of that understanding. So I do think it's about changing at the coalface, the day-to-day behaviours, and that from managements on down will make the changes that we need to make. Okay, thank you. Next question, please. So this is from Robbie Gillett. Action 5 in Credos' report about encouraging sustainable behaviour. Does that also not mean advertising high carbon products like flights and SUVs, or taking briefs from fossil fuel companies like Shell and BP? I would anticipate we're going to get a lot of questions like this, and this has been a major area of debate in our group, because obviously we are responsible for promoting those businesses and building their brands and so on, and have been for decades in many cases. I'm going to give an answer to that. Then I'm going to hand over to James as well, because this is an incredibly important question, and we've probably got a dozen or more questions along these lines. So my view is one that we are about accelerating change. If you think about advertising, it is a key ingredient of innovation and competition. And it's innovation and competition that is going to change the planet. It's the way businesses change, the way that the products we consume are remade and re-engineered and supply chains changed, that is going to enable us to meet the climate goals that the whole planet needs to reach. And I was very struck, I don't know whether people heard on the radio this morning, reflecting on the announcement from the government about bringing forward the ban on new petrol and diesel sales till 2030. And the MD of Vauxhall was on the radio talking about the impact on his company. And he was incredibly supportive and positive, much to the dismay, I think, of the Today reporter who was trying to find some miserable angle on the whole thing. But he was very positive because he said, we've been working towards this. This is not a bolt from the blue. And in fact, most of their range were going to be ready, I think he said, by 2025 or something like that. So, big companies are moving incredibly fast. If you're running a car company, you can't just turn this round very quickly. You've got to be planning for the future on this. So they're all ahead of the curve, I think, in the most part. And of course, what will be the key driver from our industry is to encourage people to buy those products. And of course, they're more expensive to buy, but they're cheaper to run. So the whole life costs of an electric vehicle are pretty much broadly comparable with a petrol or diesel one. So we can be part of the change. And I think we should unashamedly embrace that change and work with the brands, particularly who want to change and need to change to meet their own climate goals. All those companies, car companies, fuel companies, airlines, are going to have to be carbon neutral by 2050. And many of them are putting in place plans to achieve that before 2050. So James, this is such an important issue. Don't let me hog the answer on that one. Can ask you for a perspective as well.
Sure. I mean, to answer the question directly, of course, agencies can decline to work for clients in certain categories. When tobacco was legally advertisable, first a few like Bill Bernbach, then many, and in the end, certainly in this country, nearly all of us in the agency world declined to work on tobacco. But on the whole, advertising is about telling clients stories as attractively as possible, and we don't prescribe those stories, but they are changing. The stories, as we've heard, and as Stephen's just pointed out, perhaps in the automotive business, they're moving. BP is jumping up and down, trying to show how it's changing itself. Now, for better or worse, some of those things are worth hearing, and some of them may well be worth publicizing. But it's up to regulators to some extent, and ultimately legislators, to actually put a ban on things. That's beyond our scope. We don't prescribe who has the freedom of commercial speech. That is beyond our remit. But what we can say is that advertising can be such a positive influence on people's behavior, and that as the climate of opinion has changed so radically, and as the pace of change is accelerating, as we've seen and heard, I think those client stories are more and more going to be about helping people make more sustainable choices, and the companies that get left behind will simply languish, and they won't even be able to advertise because they won't have the money.
Thank you, James. Next question, please. So from Nicholas, what of the clients an agency takes on, should climate responsibility not act as a red line not to cross? If agencies refuse to take on the worst offenders, should their airtime and sales potential be greatly diminished, forcing them to reconsider their product or service and move away from their pollutant rogue status? So I think I hope, Nicholas, we began to answer that question. And I do think, there is a group of agencies, as an example, out there. I think around about 100 have signed up to a sort of, unofficial agreement, if you like, to not take on those sort of companies as James was describing. And of course, it's everybody's perfectly within their rights to do that. But I think actually the challenge here is that these companies are changing and have to change. They're not going to carry on polluting, or they're not going to be able to carry on polluting and in the way that they did before or even are today, because the law is changing. I think we are the first country to put into law in the UK that carbon neutral by 2050. We're the first, I think we're the second country after Norway to legislate that cars and have to be no petrol or diesel cars on sale from 2030. So I think we are seeing the UK certainly in the leading pack of doing these things and making these changes. But we are seeing extraordinary changes from big companies, particularly the very big carbon intensive companies. And I think that's what I think the job of our industry is to help and advise and accelerate that change. Mark Reed talked about the Change the Brief initiative, finding ways to promote products, to promote more sustainable behaviours, perhaps to promote less consumption of products. It's going to be very interesting to see post-COVID how flying comes back into our lives. Certainly I think in business travel, I think it'd be massively diminished because, as Mark was saying, we've all discovered a much smarter way of working, that we can be more closely connected and not travel. So I think we're going to see profound changes and an acceleration. And in a way, an initiative like this is to actually accelerate these things by bringing everybody together to focus on it and to give everybody a sort of, hopefully, a flag to follow to achieve this together, because it is the collective action that will do this and create the climate for change. And I would hope a year from now we've seen some massively more profound changes going. So this is like a snowball, I think, where we're seeing an incredible acceleration. And I think we have I think Extinction Rebellion, as an example, did a brilliant job last year in terms of raising awareness and forcing this up the agenda. And I think we all owe them a debt of gratitude for the work they did to force this into the public domain. And we've seen business and political leadership respond. Okay, Nicholas, I hope that answers your question. Next question, please. Leah Razak Barres. Hello, could you please let us know what steps we should take to access the carbon footprint calculator for media planning? Thanks. Thank you for the question, Leah. This is in development at the moment. We hope to be launching this in 2021. There's already very good work out there, and thank you particularly, I think, to Mediacom, who've pioneered this. And this is going to be launched through the IPA Media Futures Group. So this will be coming soon. So watch out for the announcements. Next question, please. Question from Richard Powell. Thank you, Richard. Richard, for those who don't know him, is the director of the fantastic History of Advertising Trust. Great initiative, strong action plan. Congratulations. The ad industry has done a great job reflecting diversity in commercials and ads. How does the industry reflect adaptation and the actions individuals can take, and how they're going to have to react to climate change in their normal lives? And how can this be reflected in ads going forward? Really good question, Richard. Thank you very much. James, would you like to lead on that one?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because ads play back to people either their own lives or something like it, sometimes more aspirational lives that they would perhaps like to enjoy, perhaps unexpected lives of others. Advertising that all society's in there, as it were. And in some ways, and I think Richard there mentioned the quite early moves really within advertising to accentuate diversity. The same thing is, of course, perfectly possible in terms of the behaviors and lifestyles shown in ads. So it's softer stuff, I suppose, than a direct message. It's not necessarily part of the overt piece of communication, but the way that people are presented. If somebody is driving a car, is it one person alone in a dirty great car, or are they being a bit more sensible and we've got more than one person in a smaller car? Is their home looking like it is relatively plastic free, or is the whole thing full of plastic? I mean, there are numerous ways in which people's lives can be shown, characters and behaviors demonstrated, which will help people, I think, to see that that's how lives are led, and that's how lives perhaps can increasingly be led. So it's as I say, softer stuff perhaps than bans or even change the brief initiative to help reduce the overt carbon impact of an ad. But it's very important, I think, in the framing of people's lives and making new behaviors more acceptable and more desirable. I hope that's a sort of an answer.
Thank you, James. And I would just add to that, we did extensive research on what drives trust in advertising. We've probably done more research on it than frankly we can find anywhere else in the world. So we're pretty clear about what the positive and negative drivers of trust are in advertising. And the second highest positive in terms of trust in advertising is what we've called advertising social contribution. So that's an umbrella term for all the things that advertising does to improve society. So from public health messages at the very sort of hard end of that, but actually people really notice the sort of portrayal of modern Britain, and they really like it. And they really like to see, as an example, modern Britain on the screen in terms of diversity and the way modern lives are lived. And we haven't seen a huge amount of it yet. I'm sure we are going to see a massive amount of it in the years to come, of portraying sustainable lifestyles. And I think this is an incredibly important opportunity here. As James said, it may be the softer end of things, but actually it's very, very persuasive. If people see a sort of progressive, aspirational lives lived that are sustainable, that is influential, and they like it, and they notice it. So that's, I think, something that we can aim for as an industry. Okay, it's coming up to 10:10. We're due to run till 10:15. We have got lots and lots of questions, so we're going to keep going, and we'll wrap just before 10:15 if we may. So next question, please. So a question from Zoe Jones. From an industry perspective, how are you proposing that we accurately measure and report the path to real net zero? Thank you, Zoe. That is one of the most challenging things that we're wrestling with at the moment. And this is why we've launched Ad Net Zero. And this is why we're asking businesses across our industry, in effect, to sign up, to join the cause. And part of signing up is, in effect, you sign up to those 5 actions. And part of signing up is that you commit to measure those 5 actions, and that also you share your data with us. So a big part of what Ad Net Zero is going to be doing over the next, probably, I'm going to say next 10 years actually, is going to be measuring the progress that we make. So by signing up to Ad Net Zero, you're committing to that action plan. So you're committing to switch your energy and reduce your travel and use carbon calculators on your production and so on, and media. So you're signing up to do those things. And we're also going to expect you as a business to report on those things, to track those within your business. And then our job at Ad Net Zero is going to be to collate all of that data, and as far as possible to standardize it so that we can see the progress that we're making at the moment. At the moment, we don't know, as an example, how many businesses in our industry have already switched to green energy. We think it's quite a lot, but there's a lot more to go, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to measure that progress. So we'll be doing some benchmarking in 2021, and we'll be measuring every year the progress that we make. But we can't do that. We can't go into every single business across our industry. What we are going to rely on, in effect, is the collective endeavour to sign up to Ad Net Zero, to sign up to the principles, to measure within each business how well you're doing against those principles, and then to report those in so that we can aggregate that and we can measure the progress. If we're going to achieve the goal by 2030, we're saying the halfway house by 2025 is to get to 50% of where we are in 2020. So this is the hard work starts immediately. The good news is quite a lot of businesses are already quite a long way down the road, but it's in terms of sharing that data that will allow businesses to see where they are. Are they a leader in the pack, or are they right at the back of the pack, or somewhere in the middle? By having that data and being able to put it together into one place, we're hopefully going to be able to show people where to go. And what we've seen before from other initiatives is that actually our business is brilliant at collaboration and competition. There's a fantastic UN scheme called Race to Zero, which is all about encouraging private sector firms around the world, in effect, to treat this as a competitive endeavour. Who can get there first? Who can get there best? Who can make the most impact? Who can make the most impact on their businesses? And the interesting thing is all the businesses, one of the unifying things is that they report not only less carbon, but they also report better business as a result of it too. So these two things are not mutually exclusive. Okay, next question, please. From Sarah Mansfield, what are the plans to take Ad Net Zero global, for example, the carbon emissions calculator? And Albert, thank you. As has been mentioned already before, Ad Green is the name of the advertising industry carbon calculator. It's built on the BAFTA Albert platform that broadcasters have been using for many, many years. So it's a very, very robust platform with a lot of data. We're currently rebuilding that platform to make it fit for purpose for advertising. It will be ready in the UK in 2021. It's a big job to do, but it will be ready as soon as we can get it ready. And the partners that we have signed up to support that launch, they all share the ambition that we will launch in the UK, and then as soon as possible, we will make that available globally. And the whole point about this calculator, and there are other calculators out there, so the point is to do it, whether you use AdGreen or another system, is to measure the carbon footprint. And there's a question that may come later, but I'll anticipate that one about the planning of this thing. This requires planning right at the start of the creative process, so that in effect low carbon is built in by design into the whole production. So there's lots that can be done. There's already some agencies and production companies using the Albert calculator, which is reasonably good fit for advertising, and we'll be developing that as rapidly as we can in the next few months for launch in 2021. Okay, next question. From Sean Roberts, with all this great work happening, it's important to be able to promote it and have a great story for end consumers and recipients of all advertising and messages and channels. What's the thinking here? That's a really good question. You'll remember that action 1 in our plan is getting our house in order. And I think that is our key focus. I think before, if you like, we start to communicate what we're doing, we need to be sure that we're in the best place we possibly can. So we're seeing this certainly from the Ad Association point of view and the Ad Net Zero point of view, and all the companies involved is we've got a ton of work to do to get our house in order. And I think when our house is in as good order as we can get it, my view would be that's the time we start to communicate this. So we're obviously communicating the goals, and we're going very public as of today on those goals. So we're setting ourselves the ambition, and that is very much in the public domain, and we'll have a lot of engagement around that. But the progress that we're making, I think you'll probably see the first reporting of that at our conference next year around COP26. Okay, it's coming up now to 10:15. I think we'll wrap things up at that point. I just wanted to say a huge thank you once again to everybody who's taken part in this morning. Thank you to all of you for attending. 650 or so people. I've seen there's a huge amount of Twitter action and supportive and some critical comments out there. So we expect a lot of engagement with this. My final plea is go to the AA website and register your interest to sign up for Ad Net Zero as a business. We need as many businesses across our industry to sign up to these principles. We're looking for donations to help us do this, because this is going to require quite a lot of funding, particularly on the measurement side. So we're looking to get some support for this from across the industry. But I do feel that this is an eminently achievable goal for our industry. We can do this. And I think with the interest and passion that we're seeing this morning and that we've heard about through the panel and so on, I think you get the sense that this is within our grasp. So thank you on behalf of everybody here at the AA and all of our working groups for taking part, and look forward to talking again about the progress we're making on Ad Net Zero. Thank you very much, everybody, and goodbye.